Welcome, readers. Today on Book Chat, joining me is my Buddy Reads co-host, Classy Green. We'll be discussing the mystery thriller titled No Exit by Taylor Adams. Stay tuned. I'm your host, Tamara Ford, and thank you for downloading this week's Buddy Reads, featured here on the Shelf Addiction Podcast. Every week we get bookish with book discussions, 5-minute shelf bites, interviews, and more. If this is your first time with us and you're wondering what is a Buddy Read, this feature is where co-host Classy and I select a standalone title that's interesting to both of us. Then we come together and have a candid conversation about the book or audiobook. So grab a glass of wine, a cocktail, a cup of tea or coffee, whatever it is, grab your drink of choice and settle in for this fun discussion. As always with book chats, there is a spoiler alert in effect, so you've been warned. Don't miss out on our adaptation fantasy casting for No Exit toward the end of the episode. If you enjoy this episode, please support the podcast by sharing it with one book nerd friend or on your favorite social media space. That will really help me out and I appreciate it. You can find both Classy and myself on Instagram and Twitter. If you read the book and you would like to contribute to the conversation, be sure to join the Shelf Addiction official Facebook group and talk about the book with us there, as well as other bookish topics. I hope to hear your thoughts on this discussion. The links for everything I've mentioned are below in the show notes. Okay, guys, we've got a lot to cover today, so we're going to jump right on in. Joining me is the Buddy Reads co-host, Classy Green. Welcome back, Classy.
Hi, Tamara. Thanks for having me. I am so glad to return for another Buddy Read.
So let's jump into No Exit. That's what we're here to talk about today. So Classy will do the honors of giving us a real quick overview before we jump into the discussion. Okay, Classy.
All right. College student Darby Thorne gets caught in a fierce blizzard in the mountains of Colorado as she tries to see her dying mother. The roads are closed, which forces her to wait out the storm at the next remote highway rest stop. Inside the rest stop, she comes across 4 strangers. She asks for a charger for her iPhone, because lo and behold, she left that back at her college dorm, and asks if they are getting a cell phone signal because she has none. One of them tells her, hey, if you go out to one of these statues outside, you'll get a faint signal. She goes out there. On her way back to the building, after not getting a signal, she sees a pale white hand in the back of one of the vans that is in the parking lot.
Yeah.
And this hand belongs to a young girl who is locked in a dog kennel.
Oh, gosh.
So her thoughts are one of these strangers is a kidnapper, and now she has to figure out who it is.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
That's how I felt.
Yeah, that was good. Because it's a thriller, and I guess it's kind of a mystery, but I feel like, to me, there was no question who did it. Not really. There was a little twist at the end as far as additional, people that were involved, but it didn't surprise me at all as the thing started coming out. What do you think? I mean, we know, okay, so let's go through the characters real fast. So the girl that Classy first mentioned, her name is Darby. Then we have these other main characters, Ashley, which is like the hot guy who is at the station. Then we have Lars, who is this creepy, weird looking kid who has like issues. He looks wrong.
Yeah, well, he looks mousy. I think that's the description throughout the book, right?
Well, he did not speak, right? He barely spoke.
Right.
And he did look mousy, and Darby could clearly tell something was off with him, and she instantly had bad vibes about him instantly.
Right.
There was never a question in her mind that he wasn't involved. So, and then there's Sandy, a woman that's there with her cousin Ed. And, Sandy is, I don't know, she's an odd character.
Yeah.
She wants to be, I guess, a good Christian and all of that, but she's got some other things going on. And her alcoholic veterinarian cousin, Ed.
Right.
And of course, the kid, Jay Bird, who is in the car. or in the truck, rather. So we've got a small cast. We've got like 6 main characters going on throughout this book, and it's a lot. So, like I was saying, it's a thriller, but it's kind of a mystery. It's really Darby figuring out who has the child in the van and how to get the child away from who has her, basically.
And I thought also she was trying to figure out what were they going to do with Jaybird. So I guess too that was a
Yeah.
slight mystery, or because she knew she was being kidnapped, but what did they want with her?
Now, to me, I almost thought it didn't matter what they were going to do with her.
No.
To me, I understood that she kind of wanted to know, because as she was dealing with these guys, as far as, I guess trying to decide how to deal with them, she wanted to know what they were going to do. But in my mind, the way she was thinking about handling them, it didn't matter what they did.
Right, because the end result is, I need to dispose of you because you're harming.
Mm-hmm.
Your whole goal is to harm this child, regardless of what action you're going to take. So, but yeah,
and harm us, because she knows they have a gun. She knew that pretty quickly, that they had a gun.
Right.
And then later she found out that they had another weapon that she didn't know right away, but she knew about the gun right away.
Right. But the mystery part was probably so minute. I thought more thriller, and then I read some reviews where some people even thought this was more horror, and I'm like, horror? I mean,
I get it though.
Yeah, I mean, there were some gory parts, but I don't know. Yeah, it was creepy. It got creepy.
I like how you said creepy, because in my mind, horror can totally creep me out without being bloodthirsty.
Yeah, I agree.
So, like, I think about the ghost stories and stuff. Like, those are, you're gonna be creeped the hell out, even though you're not literally seeing people being stabbed 20 times. All those things. Yeah. So, yeah. Although there was some violence in this book.
Ooh. Yeah, there were moments where my eyes got pretty big while in the car driving, or I was clutching my pearls, and not to say like ooh, it was like, oh gosh, oh, did he really just do that? And I think it was because, which I have to give much respect to Mr. Adams, his writing style, especially when it came to Ashley, that Ashley would smile in your face and shoot somebody and think nothing of it. And I think that was that part that made me clutch, because here I'm thinking he's smiling and talking, and all of a sudden there goes someone, he just hurt somebody, and I'm like, oh, I didn't see that coming. I guess that's what I'm.
Yeah, I think he is the traditional casebook like psychopath. Like, there's no way you can believe anything that comes out of his mouth.
Right. And that was the thing. It's like, I knew he was capable, but the moments when he would do stuff, a few times, it surprised me. It didn't scare me. It surprised me, because, like you said, you knew he was a psychopath. You knew he'd say, oh no, I won't do that, and turn around and do it anyway. But there was just some moments where I was like, oh, I didn't see that one coming. So I did like that about Taylor's writing. Yeah.
And also I liked, okay, so before I guess we get it further into the characters, about his writing style, when I did listen to this on audiobook though, but I did appreciate, like, when I first started listening, and, no offense to men who write from the women's point of view, but this is from a woman's point of view. And I was commenting on how smooth and non-clunky this felt. Like, it really felt believable that it was from Darby's point of view, instead of a man writing for a woman. Sometimes it's really blaring, and it's not natural, but this didn't feel like that.
Right. It did. You felt her being, I mean, from the opening scene, when she says, forget you, was it Bing Crosby, her driving, and it felt like a young college student who's rushing to meet her mom. I mean, everything from the tumultuous relationship she had with her mom, those little conversations, those little bits and pieces that he threw in there, they were the transition. It was seamless. It was, I never felt like he went outside of, or as you were saying, the big clunkiness of some stories that we've read. Well, I
Mm-hmm.
won't I won't say on this podcast, but just in our regular reading, when you're writing, I think we did do one where I said I didn't care that much for a writer who wrote about women or wrote from a woman's point of view, and I felt like it wasn't genuine, or
Yeah.
what it didn't feel, like you were saying, normal, or it just wasn't. But this right here,
Mm-hmm.
I never even questioned if this
Right.
was, um, that's not something a girl would do. I never felt like
Right.
that. If anything,
Right.
I think he made the women in this story, especially the protagonist in Jaybird, very badass. And I think
Oh
that might
yeah.
be, yeah, and I think like some of the reviews I read, oh, no young girl in college would ever do something like that. But if you think about
Yes,
it,
you would.
right, when you're put in the situation that this young
Yeah.
girl is in, and especially, and I'm not going to get too far ahead, but especially at that end part, I'm like, it's no holds bar, baby.
So, okay, think about it this way, guys. Like, this is a very unique situation. So, this is why I believe it's believable. Her phone is not working. It's not like she can call for help. She tried, it didn't work. She doesn't really know who she can trust, but obviously, what kid, even a late teenager, early 20s, what person would see a child in a dog kennel and leave them
Right.
and just say, well, not my problem?
Yeah.
Nobody. I don't know anybody that would.
No.
So the lens that she went through in this book, while she did, like, and that's the thing that made it more believable to me, is she was not hurt. She was very hurt throughout
Oh,
this book. She was getting, jumping through windows. She was getting knocked in the head. She was getting, I mean, she was getting it.
she was getting
She's getting her
choked
butt
out
kicked
in
by
a
these
plastic
guys. Yeah,
bag.
getting choked out.
Yeah.
Right. So her brain, her ability to think faster than they could, is what saved her, really.
Right. Right. Because see, they thought, that she was just this little young, innocent girl, college student, but she was her backstory, she wasn't that innocent. She was a little troublemaker. She stole her mom's
Yeah, she
car.
was.
She was a smart ass. So I mean, he didn't give us a whole lot, but just those two comments that I just made just let me know that she was resourceful. She had done some
Mm-hmm.
things where she did some sneaking out. She did some figuring out, okay, so how I'm gonna get back in here without anybody knowing. So I believe they were believable. I don't care. That's just my thoughts.
Yeah.
And
I agree with you because I mean, even how she found Jaybird, she used a skill from when she was stealing a vehicle. So she knew how to get the door unlocked. An average person wouldn't know how to do that. I mean, if I needed to get in the car and I didn't have a key, I wouldn't know what to do besides break the window. But because she had that skill already, she had that skill set, it made it believable that she could do
right,
it.
she had to do it quietly because
Right.
it was snowed in, so most noises, and she was fearful that they possibly had an alarm, or well, even if she opened the door, the alarm would have went off. But she was trying to be as quiet as she could, or not draw as much attention to herself as much as she could. She didn't know any of these people, so because at that
Exactly.
point she didn't know who owned what car in the parking lot. Because I mean, this is basically right at the beginning of the story. So
Yeah.
she didn't know names. She didn't know. All she knew is, was it the truck or the van had been there. The truck, one of them had been there the longest, according to the snow that was packed on the vehicle. That was all, so it was a nice, and I would say it was a nice whodunit, even though we kind of knew who done it, but I don't know. This is such a different story, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I was so happy. We haven't had a good story like, well, for me, in a long time on our buddy reads.
Yeah, I agree. I really, really like Darby's character. I mean, just to kind of piggyback on her a little bit, like, I feel like she was really a complex character. She was a little bit, like I said, she was quick thinking, but sometimes she might have been a little impulsive,
Right.
but she never gave up.
No.
And even when she wanted to, she was like, okay, get your life, girl. Get your life together. We got to figure
Yeah,
this out
she
because they
did.
will kill everybody.
Right. She had to talk herself, she had to
Yeah.
talk herself out of giving up, or she would have to remember what her mom told her. And I think that was her inspiration because, her and her mother had a tumultuous relationship. And here she's trying to get to her mom, to see her, or, tell her whatever before she passes away. And
Mm-hmm.
she has all these obstacles in her way. And she made a lot of mistakes. And like you said, she did things before thinking, but that resilience turned out for the good for her. Yeah, she made some mistakes,
Yeah.
but I think she kind of learned from those early mistakes. Like, okay, I remember when I did that. I can't do that this time. This next time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. She's a great character. And I also really liked I did like Jaybird's character, so let's talk about that little girl for a minute. She
Okay.
is the little girl in the back, and she's like 7 or 8 years old. And when Darby finds her, she's in a dog kennel. She's sick. I mean, there's like smell of like pee, and there's like burgers everywhere, like wrappers. It's just a disgusting situation.
Right. And vomit and yeah.
The vomit, yeah, and she's not even scared. Like, she's talking to her like a reasonable person.
Right.
Like, okay, look.
Like, I'm not really in this
Right.
kennel, but yeah, this is my home. I've been sitting here. I've been here for a while.
Yeah. She's very uh, articulate. And I think a lot of kids would be crying too hard to figure out, or too in shock to even figure out what to say. But she was on top of it. Like,
Yeah.
this is, even though she couldn't say, this is my full address, she was able to say, oh, I live here.
Right.
And it's by this. And I don't know how long we've been traveling, but, they took
On
me.
this day,
She's
right.
able to, right. Yeah.
And I think too, she may have learned because she didn't she have a scar on her hand from somebody?
Yeah, she got a yellow
Right, she
card.
got a yellow card. So she had a scar on her
Yeah.
hand, which, is that, I forget what they call that. Not learned behavior, but um, she learned, okay, then I need to be calm, or I need to do what they say, or she knew that she could
Mm-hmm.
only do so much. And she also knew she wasn't sure if she could trust Darby. So she's like you said, she's observant because she knew Lars was gassy, that he ate too much ranch.
But you know what? I think she did know that she couldn't trust him, because I don't know if you remember, but at one point she told Darby, you shouldn't have said that to him because
Because he
he's going to get upset.
does not
Right.
forget. So right, so she was observant.
Mm-hmm.
So she watched and realized that she saw that relationship between Lars and, oh gosh, I don't know if I should mention that because we haven't gotten into them. We're talking about Jaybird, because I was about to get ahead of myself
Mm-hmm.
with the other characters. But yeah, Jaybird was very observant, and she was a sickly child. We found out that she had Addison disease. Was it Addison's or something with her adrenal?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but Darby didn't know that until later, but I think that also may have contributed to her character as being mature, articulate, because with that disease, you're always with doctors, you're always with adults, you're probably not that much with your peers. But she was an only child, I believe, right? I don't think when, yeah,
Yeah, she
I
was an
think she
only
was an only
child.
child. So she was very mature for her age, and I think a lot of people didn't see her character as being believable. And as a mother of three children and being around other family members who are only children, some of those kids are very smart, very resourceful, because they're around adults a lot. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, I did. I love the two females, those
Yeah.
two females in the story. The other female,
Mm, right.
she gets the side eye.
I mean, even when exactly. I mean, even when, so obviously, she gets out later, she gets out of the vehicle, but she was even smart enough to know, well, let me run this way and then run back around.
Yes.
So she was even smart enough to lead her footprints away and then come back around where they couldn't
Right, to
see.
make it seem like,
I'm like,
yeah, she
wow.
was. She was a smart girl.
Yeah.
But who's to say? I mean, you're in that van. She probably had seen and heard enough to realize. I mean, God, I can't even explain. She was just a smart girl. He made her out
Hmm.
to be a really smart girl, and I'm glad he did. And I don't care what anybody says that it wasn't believable. I'm glad that he did make her character out to be smart and mature like she was, because those type of people do exist.
Yeah, and if she were any other type of character, if she were a crier or, let's say she couldn't function like this version of the character did, that would have made it even harder for Darby to accomplish her goal.
Right.
She wouldn't It would have made it so hard for her
Right. Because
dragging around the crying baby.
right. Right, because she gave her the knife. She had Darby had a
Yeah.
knife, and she cut herself out of the kennel. She was the resilience. But again, that is a characteristic of a child who has been dealing with this type of disease since I think she's been dealing with this probably for a long time. I mean, you think of children who have leukemia and all these other kind, most of them are fighters. That's the
Mhm.
word. They're fighters. So when she did what she did, as far as like with the footprints in the snow and all the other things throughout the story, all I saw was she's a fighter.
Yeah.
I mean, she's almost at a point where I don't have nothing to lose, or all I have is to keep going forward, and whatever happens,
Yeah.
happens. And I think that's probably with even with adults, I think, who have these kind of conditions, they're living life to the fullest, and whatever happens, happens, but I'm going out fighting. I'm not
And
I'm not
I mean,
surrendering.
honestly, from the little girl's point of view, she didn't have anything to lose on two fronts. One, she's sitting in that kennel. She's probably heard them discussing what they're going to do with her.
Yes.
So
Right.
she already probably knows what her fate is. Even though she might not understand it 100%, she knows nothing good.
Right.
Number two, she knows she has not had her medicine.
Mhm.
And she knows what could happen because you best to believe with that type of disease, the child is informed, right? She knows what happens if she doesn't take it.
Mhm.
So she's got nothing to lose. It's like, I'm going to get out of here and maybe live or I'm going to die. So you
Trying.
really don't have a
Right. I'm
choice.
going to die
Right.
trying. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I did. Like you said, these two characters were great. I loved them.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna move on to
Yeah.
the
Let's move on.
strangers.
So, yeah, let's move on to them.
Yeah. Who do we want to start with? Who did she run across first? Ashley.
Okay, so she met Ashley. Well, she saw Ashley first because remember when she walked in the door? she saw him, and then I think she saw somebody coming out of the bathroom. She saw Ed coming out of the bathroom. So she knew there were two guys in front of her. And then she turned around and heard Lars behind her.
That's right. Right.
And then after that, then Sandy, after she heard a noise sometime later, she realized, when Sandy came out, oh, there was a woman in the bathroom too.
And that setup right there, again, was creepy as hell.
Yeah.
Because you come to a rest stop, the roads are closed, and you don't know these people, and I don't know, it just made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Because, have you ever stopped at a rest stop because you're like, I need to go. I need to go to the bathroom. I really don't want to, but I have
I
to.
did a month ago.
Right. And you try and hold it to the last minute, and you go and you're like looking and looking, and any little sound or any person, you're like, your senses are on 10. So I can imagine, in front of you, you can see people, but you're hearing all these other sounds, and it's like, what is going on? And it's like,
but I've never been to a rest stop where it was partially abandoned, or every time I've been, like the last time I was actually on a trip, to my niece's graduation, but there were like 30 people there.
yeah.
There were a lot of cars. So I think if I came across a rest stop in that type of situation where there were only a handful of cars and it was dark and I couldn't,
I'm moving on.
I don't know what I'd do.
Yeah.
I think I'd just have to go like in the woods or something before I went in there, because they could overpower you.
Yeah. And it doesn't help when you read thrillers and suspense novels. Everybody's a perp, or you watch
true crime.
Right. Everybody's a perp. Everybody, I'm just afraid. And then, when I started,
but see, that is why you'll never see us on Channel 4 or 7 or whatever, because we're not the dummies going in there with 2 men, 3 men by yourself. We're not doing it.
Nope. No signal either.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Right.
When I was listening to this book, all I could think of, and I don't know if you remember this, is Michael Jordan's dad when he stopped at that rest stop to take a nap, and was killed by those two. Do you remember that story?
No.
Michael Jordan, the basketball player, his father was murdered. I don't know if he was murdered at the rest stop, but that's what happened. He was sleepy after a drive or something, and he stopped at a rest stop to take a nap. And I believe these two men, basically robbed him, or woke him up and robbed him, and took him to a remote location and killed him. But yeah, so I always fear, because they always say, oh, take a rest at the rest stop. That's the story that is in my mind. And now we have this story. So my
rest stops are safe if you're with someone. I think. Right. I think it's safer if you're not alone.
No, I think my rest stop will be a gas station.
Not to like sidetrack the story, but I was watching a couple of people that like do the whole van living on YouTube and stuff, just out of curiosity. Mm-hmm. And just so you know, if you need to stop and rest somewhere, you can go to a Walmart parking lot or a Meijer parking lot. Any store that's open 24 hours, and just sit by, you can park up under the light if you want. You don't have to go to a rest stop.
Yeah, and I have seen campers and different things like that parked in the, in the very back of one of those places. So, okay, that's good to know. No. But still, those,
yeah,
still
safety, people, safety first. Anyway,
all right. So so she saw, like you said, Ashley. So we'll go into Ashley.
Okay, he is, I kind of knew something was wrong with him from the beginning. And the problem I had with Darby not considering Ashley initially was because of how he looked.
Yep.
I'm like, why are you just, because she saw Lars and he looks creepy, right? And then she sees Ashley, who looks clean and cute, and it can't possibly be him.
Well, he even said, what did he say? The who would oh God, what was the line about the murderer? It's the nicest one, or the basically the least one you would expect is usually the murderer.
I think Darby messed up in her when this whole thing started. I stand by that. She was too, what's the word I'm looking for? Concerned with looks versus the reality of what could be.
She was a little superficial.
Yeah, she was very superficial and she made some assumptions that got her in trouble. So yes,
Hmm.
she was correct. Yes, Lars was, you know, one of the people that snatched the little girl. But, so she makes this plan. She's like, "Oh, it's Lars. I need some
Oh,
help. I need somebody stronger, bigger.
oh.
I'm going to I'm going to recruit Ashley."
But this was the thing, like you were saying too. She made the assumption and she knew something was wrong with him. But
Mhm.
she didn't realize that he possibly wasn't the mastermind. Like, and she may have thought that maybe he isn't bright enough to pull, this whole thing together. But yeah, her assumptions were, again,
Well, okay, so obviously, if you don't know, guys, Ashley is just as bad as Lars is. And they really had a and I know this was Ashley because he has the brain to think like this. They really had an elaborate scheme to kind of disguise themselves from people who didn't know what they were doing. So Ashley and Lars are actually brothers, but they acted like they didn't know each other.
right. Because they look nothing
Yeah.
alike, because Lars is what?
Well, he had alcohol,
Fetal
what
alcohol
do you call it?
syndrome.
Fetal, right. So, I mean, I don't think he looked like anything that is really scary. I just think he just didn't clean himself up. He had some odd things about him that, look even worse when you're not clean cut and you're not put together. It just makes you look even more scary. You know what I'm saying?
Now
And
he did have
suspect.
some features that he had little teeth. He had, and
Yeah.
so I'm
If I know
assuming.
regular people with little
Oh
teeth.
gosh, oh gosh, okay, all right, all right,
Little teeth and all gums. I know
oh
some people like
gosh,
that.
all right, Tamara. Let's get back to my. You're gonna have me laughing here.
That's fine. That's what we're here
And
for.
you
We
are
have a
true,
good
and
time.
you
It's
are
fine.
right. I do too. But I think his description all the way up until we found out that he had fetal alcohol syndrome. So now, once we figure that out, now in retrospect, I'm assuming I think most people who have fetal alcohol syndrome, I think they have like a flat. Is it the flat face, not Down syndrome? But you know, what I mean, his features, they did stand out,
Hmm.
and I think he wasn't as clean cut. You could tell that something was wrong with him, and so
See,
she
I
was
just
probably.
felt like he was mentally slow. I feel like he was
Uh,
more slow than he was
Look,
disfigured or disformed.
yeah, I didn't think he was disformed, but I thought, I don't know, because the more he kept saying the ratty look and the teeth, and I was like, ugh, I don't know.
See, I just think of somebody that's dirty and unclean, wearing crazy clothes, not, dirty clothes, just looking like homeless or something.
Okay, so I looked up fetal alcohol syndrome for people, and some of their facial features, sometimes they're a little disfigured. Some, not all. So when you get a chance later on, look at that. So, but yeah, but
Hmm.
Ashley
Okay.
was, the tall, handsome. He looked athletic. He lied and said he was a student at San Diego, right? Some college. Um,
That he made up, by the way.
right, that he made up, because there's a
Yeah.
gazillion colleges, so she would have never guessed, and so she's just assuming a college student wouldn't kidnap a child. What does he want with a child? And Lars fit the look. He looked like a predator.
He looks suspect. Yeah,
Right.
he looks suspect.
Yeah.
Um, which is partially correct. But I do, little did she know, the guy she enlists to help her is the ringleader.
That was such a beautiful scene. I laugh every time I think about that scene of, "Hey, I gotta see come meet me in the bathroom. I need your help."
He's like, I got a girlfriend. And she's like, what? Get your ass in the bathroom.
Right. He tried to play it off like,
Yeah.
"No, I don't like you. I have a girlfriend. I don't wanna hit on you." But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but the whole time she's trying to tell Ashley, "Hey, Lars has kidnapped this girl. There's a girl in a van, and I think it's Lars. We need to bum rush him." And they have this, like you said, elaborate scheme with the rock in a sock, and when he opens the door, I'm going to charge, and nothing worked out the way it was. Cause
No.
yeah, it was just funny.
So if I remember correctly, so she goes through the doorway, which is the cue, right? It's supposed to get Lars to follow her and then Ashley to follow behind and knock him upside the head. But instead of him following her, he just lets her just go out.
Yeah,
She just goes.
right. And she starts
And she's
looking
like,
back. There's nobody behind me.
yeah.
Mm-mm. And then I think she gets all the way to the van and realizes the whole plan is gone. And I think when she walks back in, that's when she sees Ashley and Lars talking together, and Ashley is using the rock in the sock, kind of like playing with it. And that's when she realized, holy cow,
Yeah.
these two are working together.
See, I think she realized before that because when she was out, she went to the van and then I think she was already there. So she said, I think she was going to try to get in the van again to check on Jay Bird. And that's when remember Jay said, well,
That's
the other
right.
guy. And she's like, what other
Yeah.
guy? And she's like, oh yeah, he has she described it and she's like, a nail gun? They have a nail gun? And she's like, where is it? Where did they put it? She's like, I'm like, oh
Right.
my God. And then she kind of just figured
The
out
other
like
guy is
F. And
Ashley.
then she goes back and sees him.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, and I mean, between Ashley and Lars, I gotta say, they had some real, what is the word I'm looking for? Some real, like not just plans, but like even how they communicated, it was very tight. They used
Yeah.
signals, they used
They,
keywords, they used, I mean, it was very like
it
CIA
was.
style. Like, don't let any, right. He had a cue for go, for stop, for, wait, or, he had like different cues for everything. And he trained that into his little brother.
I think he said they started doing that as when they were younger.
Yeah. After they
Yeah.
figured out that their uncle was a damn serial killer or rapist or some shit. Like,
Child trafficker. Well, not child. He was a human sex trafficker, right?
see, I don't even think he was
Basically.
doing that. I think he was kidnapping a woman, leaving her in there. Because remember when he was a child, he saw the girl, he got the water,
Yeah,
he
she went
came
to
back, and then the uncle was like, "Oh, I'll take it." And then the next time he came, it was empty. I feel like because he killed her and buried her somewhere.
right. Yeah, because he got discovered, or she
Yeah.
only can live for so long.
He's like, "Well, I'm found
Oh,
out. He saw there was a woman in here, so now I got to get rid of her."
right. But it didn't stop him.
No, but that
No.
got
But
Ashley learning how to be, and that makes me, that's that whole nature over nurture thing. Like, are you already kind of like that? And then you see, it's in your blood. You're already kind of like that. And then you're seeing it firsthand. So you already know you can be sneaky and sleazy and do these things. So it just
it
from
doesn't wake
there,
something up in you, right? Like
right?
it just wakes something that was in
Like
your
it was dormant until then.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there were still moments in this story was where I still wasn't sure because about the other two characters and Big Kenny, which is his uncle. And I'm like, okay, is Ed Big Kenny? And that was again, the writing of this story, because like you said, we knew who kidnapped, but there's something else lingering that we just don't know about. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that was that suspense part for me that I loved, because I could not figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
He gave us the basic. Lars and Ashley took the girl, but there's something else. There's a plot twist you just don't know. So yeah.
Yeah. And so, what do you think about the time that it took to get that final reveal about um, Sandy? Because on one hand, I did feel like it went fast, but at some point, I distinctly remembering like, "Come on, what is it? Like, come on!" Like, I remember kind
Yeah.
of feeling a little bit of agitation because I
Yeah.
knew something was coming, but it was just taking so long to get there in that moment.
And it got me when, how many times does this girl have to jump in and out of that bathroom window?
Right.
That's that's when it was like, okay, this is just way too many times.
Yeah.
I felt like I was living 51st dates with her going out of that from the movie. It was like, oh, she's going in the window.
Yeah.
Oh, now she's jumping out the window. And I'm thinking to myself, you're gonna tell me this girl has been in and out of this bathroom and knocking stuff off the wall, and Ed didn't hear, well, Ed might have gone to the truck, but Sandy is not, she's that damn sleep. So,
Mhm.
that she can't hear anything. So yeah, I think that was that moment, that struggle and that fight, where he put the bag over her head and she got away. And it was just like, I mean, it was good, but it was to a point where it's like, just tell me now what is going on. And
Yeah.
then I still, I kind of knew something when she came back and Ashley wrote that note on the napkin and said, if you say anything, I'll kill them both. And Sandy was supposed to be asleep. And I'm like,
I wondered if she was really asleep.
yeah, I was too, because my thing is, we're in a storm and I don't know any of these people. I am not about to be in REM sleep around you people. No.
Exactly. And your brother is an alcoholic. He could be out there getting drunk. You can't rely, or your cousin, you can't rely on him. Like, why would you be
Right.
doing that? I wouldn't be
I'm
sleeping.
sleeping with one eye open. Me and
Yeah.
that little nasty coffee would be best friends.
Exactly. I'm not sleeping at all.
No. So I kind of was like, but then I was like, okay. So then I was second guessing myself, because it was like, no, that's too easy for Sandy. It's got to be Ed. And then I'm like, no. So yeah, I second guessed myself a few times with those two, but gosh, I can't.
You know what I was
The book was
hoping?
good.
I was hoping that Sandy was faking sleep and that she would wake, like she would give her a look like I heard that or something and help her, but that is
Right.
not what happened.
No. That's what I was hoping too, that she would kind of give her that look like, I got you, girl.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, yeah, not at
Mm-mm.
all. Miss
Mm-mm.
Church girl. Don't curse, Ed.
I
Don't
know.
curse. See, something here. I don't like something here.
And then you go off, and then okay, so let's talk about her role. Let's just move on and talk about her. So
Okay.
Sandy is a part of this whole thing. So she was the girl's bus driver, and again, Jaybird, like she's smart. Like she's told, you know, Darby, you can't trust them. Don't trust them. And eventually Darby gets out of her. And I'm like, why? 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 And of course the girl
Right.
takes her sweet time and eventually she gets her to, she's like, what is it? Just tell me. And eventually she says, well, she kind of looks like a bus driver. And she's like, what? Like,
Right. That took a
oh,
long time. She's
yeah,
done like how many other things? They kept peeking out of the window, and I think that was another moment. They're peeking out of the window. I'm like, but you never got back to Jaybird, and why not to trust these people?
right.
You're setting up an ambush, but Jaybird said don't trust him. Like,
Right. Like, you
"Grr."
got to figure out why she would say that. Like, to up until
Yeah,
now, she has not been ridiculous with anything. So if she's
no,
saying that, there's a reason. You should probably find out what it is.
right. Before you
So
start on this venture, the same way you started with Ashley.
she's about to repeat the
Yeah,
same mistake again.
mhm, yeah. But yeah, Sandy is the come to find out was her bus driver,
Mm-hmm.
and which is a plot hole that I still have not figured out, or I don't think anyone has. Um, how did Sandy did Sandy kidnap her, or Sandy gave Lars and Ashley
Sandy,
the information
yes. Yes.
on how to get Jay?
Right. They were looking for somebody that they could ransom or something
Right,
like that. And Sandy was like, "Oh, I know this kid's rich."
right, because she would drop her off at this house. They knew, right, and but I think the plot hole that I had, it was like, how did Sandy meet up with these two knuckleheads? How did she
Yeah.
come across these two? But
Yeah.
that's not really important, I guess, in the end of the story. But so yeah, Sandy was a partner in this kidnap ransom, but she just thought that they were going to kidnap the girl and ask for ransom. And come to
Mm-hmm.
find out that was not Lars
That's
and
not the truth.
Ashley's plan. They were
Yes.
going to take her to their Uncle Kenny to be trafficked, with
Mm-hmm.
some of the truck drivers that come through their town. And Ed, come to find out, had nothing to do with it.
No.
He just happened to be a rider with Sandy as they made their way.
He was her alibi as to why they
Ah,
were there, remember?
okay. Yeah. They were on their way to a family reunion. But even Ashley was just like, why did you bring him? Because he wasn't a part of the plan. I guess she made her own plan, right? Or was she? I don't think Ashley knew that Ed was coming. Right, right. He didn't, because I think when he told him, oh gosh, yeah. But you're right. In the end of things, he was an alibi.
Right, because she needed to explain what she was doing there. Should she get caught there or should they get caught there?
Right.
Because I think the plan was to, again, act like they didn't know each other.
And we were just coming through on our way to a family reunion, and we got caught in this storm. But I mean, no, the storm was not a part of the plan.
Right.
Let's get that right. That
Because
was not a part of
Darby
the
would have
plan.
never came across them if it wasn't for the storm. The storm
Right.
was the perfect thing that stopped them from going further because their
Right.
plan was to let's meet. Sandy would hand off the medicine that would keep her
Right.
going, and then they would be
Yes.
on
And
their
that
way.
key, right. She had the key to the storage unit that had the girl's medicine. Right.
Right.
Yeah. Uh, but their plot was spoiled.
It was spoiled.
So yeah, and poor Ed, at one point I was thinking he was a jackwagon because, he was because at one point I didn't believe that he was a veterinarian. I was like, yeah, right, he's working with Ashley, because I thought church lady, she couldn't have possibly been a part of the scheme. But then again, the least person you would suspect. But I really
Making
thought,
assumptions this time, the audience making the reader
right,
making
but I really
assumptions.
thought Ed was an accomplice to Lars and Ashley because of some of his comments. But come to find out, they were truthful, because I think he had said something about the girl's disease and she wasn't going to make it. And Darby questioned it, and he's like, dogs have Addison's disease too. And I was like, oh yeah, I forget. Just like they have
Yeah.
diabetes and we have diabetes. So,
Opposite from you, I did not think that Ed was a bad person.
oh,
I'm like, well, he's a little obnoxious, and obviously he's a drinker. Like, but I didn't think he was bad. I didn't.
hmm,
And when And it's funny because when she very first thought of the plan and she wanted to enlist Ashley's help, I was like, why didn't she ask Ed to help her? And I'm like, well, maybe because he was drunk, but or he was old. But
Mhm.
I did wonder that.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, he has a nice band of characters to make us question. Well, made me question. I don't know if you question yourself about some of the characters, but or just even made Darby question herself with, um, her decisions and her assumptions. So
Now,
I
one
did.
thing that you caught that I missed was at the end. Okay, so we're gonna. Oh, I'd like to kind of just talk about the end. So at the end, it comes out that like we just said, that Lars and Ashley were taking Jaybird to their uncle because we saw this whole there was this email that the uncle was writing when he got a knock on the door from the police. But I thought I didn't connect that was their uncle. I just thought it was some guy that
Hmm.
was trafficking children. It didn't connect to me that was their uncle until you said that.
Ken, right? It was Big Kenny.
Yeah.
But I had thought at one point, like with the email, because I thought he was in. Again, everybody's interpretation is different because I was like, okay, did the email not send at the time because the storm stopped? But then again, he was sending it, and the knock at the door was the police to arrest him.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think he was writing the email real time, and then he got interrupted by the door ringing. That's why the letter just stopped kind of the way it
Right?
did.
Yeah.
And then he was arrested.
Yeah. Ugh.
But we talked a lot about kind of a bunch of stuff that was going on, but I do also want to talk about the resolution of this whole plot. So at the end, Darby and Jaybird, they get away, they're in the car, then of course the car's tires go down. So they're like, "Oh no, he's there, he's coming, Ashley's coming," and he has, his nail gun. And Darby has a gun that she took from Lars before she offed him, and it's one bullet in there. So we're like, oh goodness, oh Lord. I'm like, just shoot the guy, don't miss. Even
Right.
Jaybird's like, don't miss him, okay? Don't miss him.
Yes.
And so all of this happens. They tuss, it's a fight, and then of course the police come, and there's confusion over, instead of saying freeze, he just freaking shoots, okay? Because he sees a girl with a gun. Like, dude, you didn't even say put your hands up, freeze, nothing. You just shot someone, and you don't
Right.
even know if they're what's happening. You have no idea.
And there's Ashley with his jelly
Yes.
side up, his toast.
He like, ha ha ha. He laughed. He's like, I can't believe this just happened. Like,
Right.
how perfect is this?
He's like the gods.
And so of course he takes out that officer with his, nail gun because, this dummy shot the wrong person.
Mm.
So so all of that, and then of course there's gunshot at the end. And then is she dead? Okay, so at first I thought that in the end Darby died. And then I replayed the end because the very, very end, there's a section where Jaybird and her parents go to Darby's hometown, and they go to um, a cemetery, and it seems like they're walking alone, but they're not. So at the end there, they said they're kind of standing there waiting while someone is shading, a tombstone. And then the
Mhm.
father says, "You take as long as you want." She's like, "Oh no, I'm done." And that's when I figured Darby lived. Darby lived because he said, "We need to see her again to, say something, to say something that money can't do." So
Right.
that's why after listening to it 3 times, I'm like, "Oh, Darby's alive." And she just shaded her mother's tombstone because
Mm.
that was her hobby. So she'd take like parchment paper or something, and she would shade it with charcoal over the tombstone to get the information off the tombstone onto the sheet of paper.
Right.
So at the end, that's what she had. She had that. And then J. Bart asked her a question about, oh, what did you, something about her relationship with her mother. And she said, oh, I was wrong, or something, like it wasn't complicated after all.
Right.
So I'm like, wow, that really confused me for a minute, where I had to listen like 3 or 4 times. Did you have to do that at the very end?
I did. Because I was at first I was thinking, is she talking to? Because when people go to the grave, they talk to the people as if they're like, hey, how you doing? Or you know how people are at gravesides, and that's what I thought had happened at first. That Jaybird was having a conversation to Darby and to her grave basically. But then I questioned myself several times because I'm like, why is she asking about her mother? But then
Mm-hmm.
I went on Taylor Adams' website and he made a statement that said,
Oh, he did?
about the ending. He said, did Darby die or not? He said, on that note, heroes don't always survive to the last page. I hope you enjoy. And I'm like, that does not help me,
No,
Mr. Adams.
no, I
Not at
don't
all.
like that. Because I guess he wants us to interpret it how we want to.
Right.
But my interpretation was that she lived.
Right.
And I could see how you could interpret that she died. But then I feel, and at first I'm like, but if she died, who is she talking to? And this book had no paranormal things. So now we're
Yes.
talking to ghosts? Well, that don't make any
Exactly.
sense.
I
So,
thought the same way. And then I
yeah,
figured that she did live, and the family's gift to Darby, because, was, and I don't know, at first I was like, so did they provide her with a burial for the mom? Because the mom didn't have any money. I don't think they had any money. So I'm
right.
not sure. It was just so many, the ending was left up to the reader. I mean,
Yeah.
but yeah.
I mean, even in her final scene, Darby was kind of talking to like her mother, or dreaming or thinking about her mother. Um,
Yeah.
so then I'm
Right.
like, well, maybe her
Right.
mother is gonna just like keep her alive, right, until they come, or like the
Mm.
idea of her mother, or something. It
Right.
kind of
Give her
turned real
strength.
spiritual right at the end. I'm like,
Yeah.
ugh,
Right. Because she was like dreaming and she said, count to 5 or breathe. And it's okay. I got you. The monsters won't get you anymore. So yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
And I think that's what at first made me think she was dead, but I don't. I really think she's alive. I do. I feel like she was unconscious. I feel like she
mm-hmm.
definitely fainted and was unconscious because she was losing blood. But I feel like maybe the cold saved her. Sometimes the cold
Right.
will save you.
Yep. It sure will. And I know, like you said,
So,
we're almost an hour in, and listeners, there was so much in between what we talked about that was very interesting. And if you want to read this, please go back, because that climax part where they're fighting to the end, Ashley and Darby, and that fight between Ashley and Darby and Jay and Ashley, all that was phenomenal. And we didn't talk about it, and it's a lot to talk about, but it brought something to the book for me.
yeah, there was a lot we didn't cover.
It was like those fight. Yeah, it was. There was a lot. I mean, he attacked her tons of times, and you know she fought through those elements. I mean, she's out there in chucks. She didn't dress accordingly because, I mean, for one, she thought she was just going to make a quick run up there to see her mom. So she didn't have boots. She didn't have probably a heavy coat. She didn't have none of those things. So,
Mm-mm.
yeah. So
Mm-mm.
those are a lot of pieces that add a nice element to this story.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay. So we both listened on audiobook, right? You did too?
I did.
Okay. So I think what we're going to do now, we're going to take a quick break, And when we return, we're going to talk about the audiobook narrator. We're going to give our rating and maybe a recommendation as to who should read this book. And last but not least, we are going to do our no exit movie fantasy casting. So come right back.
Hey everyone, I'm Lily. And I'm Britt. And we're the co-hosts of Lady Shit with Lily and Britt. We talk about anything and everything related to being women today. Like how much it sucks when people ask when you're going to have a baby.
Or how much we love Michelle Obama. And is there a right way to do self-care?
As doctoral students, we're occasionally smart, putting in a little bit of research into every topic we cover. But mostly, we're just ridiculous.
As the guy who sold us our podcast equipment said, you're the kind of smart where you really have to dig. If we sound like your cup of tea, or glass of wine, new episodes of Lady Shit come out every second Tuesday.
You can check us out on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, and Podbean. Oh, and when you're searching, make sure Lady Shit is one word.
Yeah, and you have to substitute the I for an exclamation point. Why did we make this so hard to find? I guess the guy at the store was right.
Okay, so the narrator for this audiobook is Sarah Naughton, and the publisher is Brilliance Audio. So what did you think about the narrator, Classy?
I liked her. I think she did really well with everyone's voice, from male to female. I could tell the difference when the characters came in, her intonation. She put feeling into, the characters. I could feel like the anxiety and the nervousness of Ashley when, it got to the heightened points of when she discovered who Ashley was, or did I mix that up? Darby. When Darby, figured out who Ashley was in the fight, and the cleverness in the voice of Ashley was very, I thought, on point, because you could almost see him with a sinister grin on his face as he's talking, or, so I enjoyed her. I thought she did a phenomenal job with all 6 characters and more, because you had the other smaller characters. So I enjoyed her.
Yeah, I did too. This was my first time hearing her, and I really enjoyed it. I had no issues with her at all, with her style, but I did think I listened a little faster. I think it was maybe 1.25 or something. So she wasn't slow enough that I needed to go to 1.5, but I did up it just a tad. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed her. I thought that it was a really strong performance. I have no complaints, if you can believe that. No complaints about the narration.
No. I mean, it kept me on edge. It kept me interested. There was never a moment where I felt like I had to pause and come back because I was bored. I think I texted you at one time and said, I don't want to get out the car, because I didn't. I took my headphones inside work, to work, and every little moment I could get, I was trying to listen, because I was like, what's happening next? I just want to know. So, yeah, she did a great job.
Yeah, she did. I think I will actually make a little note about her so that I know if I see her name come up again, I can feel safe in, clicking the buy button.
Right. That you're going to get a good read or narration.
Okay, so let's rate this thing. Let's rate it. Classy, you go ahead and go first. You do the honors.
I gave it a 4 out of 5. A strong 4. There were a few things that I, didn't like, but there were more things that I liked that I disliked from this book. It was suspenseful. Like we discussed earlier, he did lay out, clearly who took Jaybird, but there was just some other whodunits in this story, and the twists were phenomenal. I didn't figure it out. So I think that's when I can't figure it out, that's a plus in the book for me. So 4 stars.
Yes. Wonderful. I agree with you on the 4 stars. It would have been a 5 if a couple of things were different. So I think my biggest thing that stopped me from giving the 5 is, like I said, at some point it just felt like it was, the story slowed down to like molasses at one point. I'm like, come on. How much longer can we do this? Like, how I just wanted it to end sooner or something. And then that ending killed me. I'm like, what is this right here at the end?
Right.
I didn't like that I had to go back and listen so many times to try to figure out what was going on, because the whole time it was good, and then right there at the end I was like confused.
Yeah.
And I don't like that feeling.
No, not at all. I didn't like that. And you know what, too? I think another part that I dropped one of my stars on was, I'm trying to think, I did write it down. There was one part where the story was told from, well, most of the story was told from Darby's point of view, but every once in a while, and I think it was like towards the end or in the middle, we started hearing from Ashley, and I'm like, what the?
Yeah.
It was like,
it just popped in.
Right. And I was like, what is that? This isn't Darby's, point of view. And that,
the first time it happened was when we went back to his childhood and figured out what happened when they were kids. That was the first time he showed up from his point of view.
And I was like, oh, if it wasn't consistent. So that was, another part that I didn't care for. But other than that, like I said, there were more likes than dislikes.
Yeah, and I agree. I don't even think we needed it, honestly. Like, I don't need to feel any kind of empathy toward a child abductor who was going to sell this kid. I don't really care what you went through as a child, because you're a horrible person. And I understand that
you have to take responsibility for your actions as an adult.
Yes. So I think that was thrown in there for us to have some more kind of discussion on Ashley and maybe even Lars, but it was kind of pointless because that wasn't the point. The point was to save Jaybird. So,
right.
There's that. But I do think that people, you should just know, like, if you are not into books that take place like in an isolated situation or where they have like a trapped element going on, maybe just skip it. But if those things don't bother you, I think this is definitely at least worth a listen.
I agree. And at first I was like, with the child abduction and the sex trafficking, and I was like, oh God, not one of these stories. But he did it in a way where we didn't really know until the end, and I think that helped me out, because if I had known at the beginning, I probably would have stopped reading.
Because I didn't want to know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
and again, it didn't matter. I feel like knowing that did not help me at all. I just wanted her rescued.
Right.
We can all use our own imaginations because we already have like ideas in our head of what could happen to a girl that's kidnapped. Right. I mean, we don't need to know. Right. So, alrighty. So let's change things up. We're going to do our fantasy cast if we were to make our own movie of No Exit. And I gotta say, I really do think that this would translate really well to a movie.
Gosh, yeah. It would be something that I would watch. I would definitely go to the movies to see this.
Yeah, I think that there would be parts where people are covering their eyes or their ears when, red and yellow carding is involved.
Yeah.
There are some things that are pretty grotesque, and I think that you'd be like, oh my God, look away. I think there might be a few of those in there.
Watching through your fingers because you want to look away, but you want to know what's going to happen next. What's going to happen?
Yeah. And it always sounds worse than it looks, but, it's, I mean, like the whole nail gun like getting people in the hand with the nail gun. And I don't know what he did to his brother, or so he did something where he did a red card on him. And I'm like, what was the red card? I'm like, I don't even want to know.
Right.
I don't want to know.
Lars had all the bumps on his hand. Yeah, he got a red card for something. But I know the one part that I could just really see in my head in a movie was when Darby told Ashley that Lars was dead, and he didn't believe her. And he was like, brother, Lars. He's like, he's like, no, because, because like you were saying, they trained for this. They had their own language. They had this down to a science, blah, blah, blah. You do this, you do that. He is not dead. And I think that at that moment, I think I had told you, I knew who my characters were, my fantasy cast, because I could just see them.
Yeah. So let's start with you, because I remember you saying you had no problem finding this cast. It was super easy for you. It was kind of easy for me too. Once I started thinking about the characteristics of the characters, I was thinking about actors I had seen play things that were in line with that, or people that I could see acting a certain way. So let's start with you. Let's start with the most evil character ever, Ashley. Who did you pick for that?
I picked Ashton Kutcher. And I picked Ashton because he's a handsome fella, pretty tall. He has that jokey kind of personality, and I can't remember exactly what movie, or I don't know, it was just something about him that I could see him flipping it on you, where I'm the magic man. I think it was Punked probably, he does all these things and he jumps out and says, you've been punked. But I could also see him flipping it and becoming a psychopath. So yes, I picked Ashton.
Okay. All right, I can see it. I went with Sam Underwood, and so I remember him. I think I first became really familiar with him when I was watching the Following. He played a set of twins, and he was so creepy on that show. And he came back into my memory when I was watching Dynasty. He plays Adam Carrington on Dynasty this season, and he is so devious. He is so devious. He will smile in their face and then plot behind their back and like make them look like they're like gaslighting people. It's like, oh my God, this is him. This is that character. Yeah. And he's cute, but he also has this face that looks like if he wants to just drop his, like he could just drop his expression and look really scary.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, and that was the looks he had in the Following. I can see his face so clear from the Following. He was so believable. So believable.
Like, you sure you're not crazy?
Right.
You sure you're not crazy?
Play it too well.
Yeah.
All right, so who's next? Who are we going to pick next?
Next up is Darby.
I picked Emma Stone. I see Emma, and I picked her because all I could think of was Spider-Man, and Easy A, because those were some of the movies that she starred in, and I could see where she was, the little young college student, feisty fighter. So yeah, I don't know. She was my pick.
I like her. Yeah, I like her. I like it. Okay, so for Darby, I picked Valerie Curry. So you guys might not know her by name, but if you can remember, okay, so it's funny. She too was in The Following. She played Emma Hill in The Following, but that is not where I remember her from. After I looked up Sam Underwood, I'm like, oh yeah, they were in that together. But what was primarily in my mind when I was thinking of her were two recent things that she's done. Well, not so much recent anymore, but she was in the Twilight Saga. She was one of the vampires there. And more recently, she was in the video game Detroit Become Human. She was one of the androids that was saving a child. So Yeah, so I'm like, oh, because I actually, while I didn't play Detroit, Become Human myself, I actually went through this phase where I was watching other people play it.
Mm.
So I'm like, oh, I really liked that Android character. And I feel like, she just looks a certain way. She looks like she could be, um, you know,
A fighter, right?
underestimated.
Right, because she's
And she
tiny,
also looks like she could be a
right? And
fighter.
she's
Yeah.
small frame, and you would think you would underestimate her and be like, no, she can't do this and that. But yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
like your pick I like both your picks.
Oh, thank you. Okay, next up is Lars. And I think you nailed
Oh
Lars, girl. I
gosh.
think you nailed him.
This was the thing when I finished reading the book and I was like, I know who Lars is, but I could not remember his name. Um, but I could see him in a movie and I'm like, what is this guy's name? And it drove me bananas. So I was like, just trying to remember. I picked DJ Qualls, Qualls. And where I remember him from is Hustle and Flow. He was
Mm-hmm.
Shelby. I think was he like one of the music um, producers or something that was in the studio with Terrence. But anyway, that's who I remember him from. Just really skinny, greasy hair. That's and
Mm-hmm.
like you were saying, Lars was a little disheveled, but he's tall and thin, and I could just see him being that character. Oh, I think he starred in Supernatural too, and I only watched a few episodes of Supernatural, but I do remember him in Supernatural as well.
Yeah. And it's funny when you sent his name over, I'm like, who the heck is that? But as soon as I typed it in, I'm like, oh, that guy, that's his name. I had no clue. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good pick, I think. But yeah, so I picked Daniel Radcliffe, and I know I might get some pushback on this one, but I really think that he can look really disheveled and a little bit sideways when he wants to.
Yeah, he can. And I don't know if it's because he can. I think it throws
Yeah.
you off because of those piercing blue eyes, but oh no, you know who else I almost thought of was gosh, what's the guy's name? Pattinson or whatever. The guy who I think they picked for Batman. I almost could see him, and maybe because it's just the pale skin.
Oh, Robert
Yeah, maybe
Pattinson?
because it's just the pale skin, but yeah, you're right with Daniel. He can look a little. They could do some.
Yeah, like I remember how he was looking in Horns. I think it was called Horns or whatever.
Yeah, you are right. Good pick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I agree. That's a good one.
Yay. Yeah. Okay, so let's do Sandy. Who did you have there?
I picked Melissa McCarthy. And I picked Melissa because I remember them saying Sandy was, a bigger woman. Um, and the narrator from the Audible, her voice, was a little tinny. At points, it was like high pitched. No, no cursing, Ed. And all I could think of was Melissa because Sandy, to me, there was a little comedy in her at first, when we didn't know that she was part of the plot. So I just thought, I've seen Melissa do comedy and you've seen her do serious stuff, because she just was even nominated for her role in Can You Ever Forgive Me? But she's done Bridesmaids, she's done The Heat. So I feel she's a good, character actress that could play both sides of the coin.
Yeah, I like her. I love McCarthy. She's great. I think that was a solid pick. I kind of went away from like the plus size description, although depending on what year it is, my actress could have been considered plus size, I
Right.
guess. And that's Leah Remini.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it depends on how she looks this year, but I think she could do it because, like, I just imagine her yelling at somebody about the swear jar.
Oh yeah, if you think King of
or
Queens or the Queen of, well, right.
mhm,
Yeah,
yeah,
you're right.
kind of being that bus driver, talking smack to Ashley, thinking that she's on top of it when really she isn't. I just could visualize Leah Remini playing that
Hmm.
type of character.
Yeah, that's another good pick. Just when you think you've
Hmm.
picked them all really well, then somebody else picks something, and you're like, did pretty well there with that one.
It really just shows how how we all interpret these
Right.
stories. We visualize different things. So,
Yeah, and it's always this. I love this
kind of cool.
portion. I digress. I'm sorry, but I love this portion because it gives you a visual of how each one of us saw the book or the
Hmm.
story. So okay.
Yep. Okay, next up is the drunken cousin Ed. Who did you pick for
I
that?
picked Bryan Cranston. Breaking Bad, baby.
I like him.
Malcolm in the Middle, baby. No other
Yeah.
choice. He was my hands. Matter of fact, all my choices were the first ones, hands down. So, but yeah, Bryan was my immediately putting a drink in the toilet.
Yeah, I think you nailed it there too. Yeah.
Putting the bottle of whatever in the toilet tank. I was like, yeah, that's him. That's Bryan.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. Like 100% nailed it on this character, on Bryan Cranston. Yeah, I totally agree with that. That was a really good pick. For me, I picked Ed Harris only because I feel like I've seen him be drunk in movies and stuff and be like belligerent and stuff. And so I feel like maybe that could just be him. Like, he looks a little shady, but he could just be an old man who's just drunk, I don't know. I just felt like for some reason he just popped in my head when I was trying to think of people that would fit the bill. So he was my first choice, and I can't think of anybody else besides who you picked, and I didn't think of who you
Right.
picked.
I know yeah, I'm not too sure either who else I could have picked or for Ed. But good choices. Good choices.
Thanks. Okay, so last but not least is Jay Bird. Who did you pick for that?
I guess I got to take that back with my choices hands down. I picked Bella Lotz as Jay Bird, and this one was a tough one because Jay Bird in the book is like 7 or 8 years old, and I'm not real familiar with any 7 or 8-year-old actresses. And at one point, I almost wanted to go with a black actress, a younger actress, but I stuck to the story, and Bella has the really big eyes, the innocent. I mean, most child actresses have that innocent look, but she starred in the Vampire Diaries. She was the young Liv in the TV series, and she also starred in the series Star. So she was young Star or little Star, Star when she was a younger character, but that's who I picked. So this one was a little tough because, we don't have like the Dakota Fannings and all those like we did I hate saying back in the day, but I'm not familiar with any young actresses.
Well, I'm not either because we don't watch a lot of young TV. Like, we're not watching Disney, right? We're not doing that. I did have to kind of just pull from the catalog of kids that I know on current shows that I watch. I'm like, who's young? And then when I Googled, I said actresses that are under 15 or something. Because I know sometimes you can play a lot younger. So, and then I'm like, well, that didn't pan out with anyone that I liked, right? I'm going through it. I'm like, no, they're not enough. And then I don't know how or why this girl just popped in my head, but I'm like, it's perfect. So I'm talking about Scarlett Estevez, and I literally just got finished watching her on the latest season of Lucifer a few weeks ago. She plays Trixie on Lucifer. She is so cute, and she is like small, and she's like a little smart mouth. I feel like I could see her being witty yet innocent, and it's just a perfect fit. I feel like she's also been in some other stuff like Daddy's Home and The Grinch, and I think she also did. There was another somewhat famous one that she did, but I can't remember. But most people will probably recognize her from Lucifer because she's been on all of the seasons.
Okay. Yeah, so, I like your pick.
Yeah, I like her.
I probably like your pick better than my pick.
Yeah, she's cute. So yeah, that's it, you guys. If you don't know some of the names that we've mentioned here, definitely hop on over to the coordinating blog post on shelfaddiction.com, and you will see actual photos for all of these actors that we have chosen. So you can see my picks and Classy's picks, and let us know, what you think about the book, the audio book, and who you would choose for some of these roles. I would love to hear that. What do you think, Classy? Anything else you think we should cover before we sign off here?
No, just highly recommend the book for people who love suspense, thriller, a nice I don't know if we want to consider it a whodunit, but I do recommend this book.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, awesome. So don't forget, you can interact with us on Twitter, and you can find us in Shelf Addiction Official, and we could talk about No Exit more over there. So all the links are below in the show notes as usual. And I believe that is it for today. So we're done here. I think we've held you long enough. It's been about 90 minutes. So I think this is one of the longest ones we've done, Classy.
Oh, really? We did a lot on the characters, but the characters were great.
Yeah, it was worth it. It was worth every minute. So if you actually let me know if you've listened to this full episode. I would love to know that too. You know me, I want to know all the things. So let me know. All right, that's it for today. Take care, everyone. And until next time, happy reading. If you enjoyed today's book chat episode and would like to show your support, there are a few things you can do. Head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a positive 5-star review. You can follow me on Twitter at Shelf Addiction. Most importantly, you can share this podcast with friends and family that enjoy all things bookish, including author interviews. Thank you for listening, and until next time, happy reading.